Hello, 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 and welcome to Twisted Tales Live. I am your host, Bryn Morgan. I am a horror author, and I am also a teller of scary stories. And tonight is one of my favorites, Paranormal Wednesday. I am going to be sharing the most violent haunted house supposedly in America. And what am I referring to? The Sallie House. Have you heard of it? Tonight, you are about to. But first, we have a way of how we do things here, don't we? For those of you that are here and you are new, welcome. This is the Night Room. I am the Night Queen. You are my night dwellers. Are you ready for a story? This is a warm, safe, loving family, a community. This is not just a lie. We are friends here. We have been friends now for a year. Did you know that it was a year exactly on Sunday night? So I am just so thankful to all of you for your support, for your encouragement. Thank you so, so much. For the next 2 hours, I want you to just come in, sit back, and relax. I saw a lot of you make comments that you're tired. I hear you. This is your time to just let it roll on and just listen as I tell you a bedtime story. But first, we have a way of how we enter into story time here. Lower your lights. Lock your doors. Light a candle for ambiance, or to chase those shadows away. Pull your curtains nice and tight. Wrap yourself in your warmest blanket to avoid the chills that are about to crawl up your spine. And let's begin. The Sallie House, a true haunting in Atchison, Kansas. Welcome back, brave souls. Tonight I need you to do something for me. I need you to imagine living in your dream home. A beautiful old house with character and charm. The kind of place that you would be proud to show off. Can you see it? The kind of place where you plan to raise your family, build your life, create memories. Now imagine that within weeks of moving in, something starts attacking you in your sleep. Scratching you, burning you, leaving marks on your body that you can't explain. Imagine waking up with claw marks down your back, with burns on your chest, with bruises on your arms that look like fingerprints. And no one believes you. This is not a movie. This is not creepypasta. This is not an urban legend that someone made up to scare friends. This is the true story of the Sallie House in Atchison, Kansas. And it's been called the most violently haunted house in America. The Sallie House looks normal from the outside. It's a beautiful two-story home built in the mid-1800s. White with black shutters, a front porch, the kind of house that you'd see on a postcard about small-town Americana, really. But inside something is terribly wrong. Has been wrong for over a century now. Something angry, something violent, something that specifically targets men. Uh-oh. And the Pickett family, Tony, Deborah, and their infant son, learned this the hard way when they moved in 1993. Over the next 2 hours, I'm going to tell you their story about the attacks that escalated from strange occurrences to physical violence. Oh, it got bad. About the scratches and burns that appeared on Tony's body. About the paranormal investigators who documented evidence that defies explanation. About the legend of Sallie, the little girl who supposedly haunts the house. And then, when I've got you there, I'm going to tell you a darker truth. The real history. The thing that might actually be in that house. Because, spoiler alert, it's not a girl named Sallie. So lock your doors. I would keep the lights on tonight, if I were you. And whatever you do, try not to live in a house built in the 1800s. It never goes well, because what happened to the Pickett family could happen to anyone. Are you ready to go to Atchison, Kansas with me? 1993, and meet the family whose lives were about to become a waking nightmare. Chapter 1, The Dream House. Let me paint you a picture of Atchison, Kansas in the early 1990s. It's a small town on the Missouri River. Population about 11,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Where families go back generations. Where nothing much happens, and that's pretty much exactly how they like it. A summer night baseball game, going to the drive-in theater, watching TV, throwing the football in the yard. The kids riding up and down the streets on their bikes. Americana at its best. Atchison has history. It was the birthplace of Amelia Earhart. Has beautiful Victorian homes. I was looking at some of them online today. Absolutely gorgeous. Has that small town charm that makes people want to settle down and raise families. And in 1993, that is exactly what Tony and Debbie Pickett wanted to do. The Pickett family. Let me introduce you to them. Tony Pickett was in his late 20s, a big guy, over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, strong, the kind of man who'd never been afraid of anything in his life. He worked hard, he loved his wife, and he was excited to be a new father to his son Taylor. Now Deborah. Deborah was his high school sweetheart. They'd been together for years. She was petite, kind, the type of person who saw good in everyone. And she just had a baby. Their son, Taylor, was only a few months old. They were your typical young family. They didn't have a lot, but they had love. And they believed that they would be happy no matter where they lived, as long as they were together. And they were trying to make it work, saving money and looking for a place to call their own. They were living in an apartment when Taylor was born. And that's not the kind of life that they wanted to give him. So when they found out about 508 North 2nd Street, they thought they'd found it. The house was perfect. It was built in the 1800s, 1850s. So it had that historic charm that beautiful old details can't get in modern construction, no matter how hard you try, unless you have it custom built. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, a gorgeous staircase that curved up, large rooms, a nursery that was perfect for Taylor and more kids down the road. And the rent, when Deborah told Tony how much the rent was, he couldn't believe it. In fact, he even said, something's wrong. Because it was way below market value for a house that size in that neighborhood, way below market value. So the landlord explained why it was so low. The house had been empty for a while. It needed some minor repairs, nothing major, just cosmetic stuff. He was willing to rent it cheaply to a good family who'd take care of it. Tony and Deborah jumped at the opportunity, as you can imagine. The place where they would raise Taylor, it had a backyard, it had a front yard, it had trees. Deborah could plant flowers. It was beautiful. It was where they would build their life together. First week. The first few days were normal. Unpacking, arranging furniture, getting baby Taylor settled into his new nursery. Everything was fine. And then small things started to happen. Deborah would put her keys down in the kitchen counter, and 5 minutes later, they'd be gone. She'd find them hours later in completely random places, on the shelf in the bathroom, and even in the basement. We'll talk about that basement in a little bit. And once she even found them in the refrigerator. She thought that she was just being forgetful. You know, new mother brain, new baby, not sleeping much, waking up for 2 a.m. feedings, exhausted. Of course she was losing things. Pictures would fall off the walls, not all at once, just one at a time, scattered over days. Tony would hang a picture and make sure that it was secure, and the next morning it would be on the floor, glass shattered everywhere. But Tony would say, it's an old house. Walls are probably uneven. I'll get bigger hooks. So Tony went to the hardware store and got bigger hooks. But guess what? The pictures kept falling. Then other things started to kind of crowd in. Doors would be open when they'd been closed. Lights would be on when they turned off. The TV would change channels by itself. Old wiring, Tony explained. He always had an explanation for everything. House just needs some electrical work, Deborah. And then we go to Taylor's room. Baby Taylor was fussy in his new nursery. He would scream every time that Deborah put him in the crib. And he would only calm down when she took him out of that room. But the second that she would get him to sleep and go back upstairs and put him in the nursery, in his crib, he would immediately wake up and start screaming. Deborah thought that maybe the nursery was too cold or too bright or something about the room that just wasn't comfortable for him. It was a beautiful nursery, shiny, hard, polished wood floors, high ceilings, a bay window. It was beautiful. So she'd rock him in the living room until he fell asleep, and then she would try to transfer him to the bedroom, and she would say, I'm going to take Taylor upstairs. And Tony would be like, okay. Not 1 minute would pass. The second she left the room, Taylor would start screaming again. Not crying, screaming, like he was terrified. After the third night of this, Deborah couldn't take it anymore. She wasn't getting any sleep. She was exhausted. So she told Tony, move his crib out of the nursery and into our bedroom. Tony didn't want that. But Deborah was like, well, you do want a wife that is decent and that you actually want to talk to, right? Problem solved. He moved his crib in. Taylor never cried again. Tony said a couple weeks later he wanted to move him back into the nursery. He said he's just going through a phase. He'll grow out of it. So he took the crib and moved it back into the nursery. Guess what? Baby Taylor started crying again, screaming. So the crib was moved back to the master bedroom at the end of the hall. But this is the thing, Taylor never grew comfortable in that nursery. Even when he got a little bit older, he refused to play in there. He would cry if they tried to leave him alone in that room. The next thing that happened was the house developed a strange odor. It wasn't all the time, it was just at certain times in certain rooms. Just occasionally, but it was usually in the evening when they were sitting on the couch trying to watch TV, and it would drift through the house. This terrible odor, like something was burning. It smelled, Debbie said that it smelled more like flesh burning. She checked the stove, nothing. check all the outlets. Nothing. She would walk through every room trying to find the source, but there was no source to find. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, gone. Tony suggested probably something outside. Neighbors burning trash or something. But it wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house, and it was getting stronger. And it seemed to Deborah that it was always wafting up from the basement. The kitchen was right next door to the basement, so she would be in there trying to cook supper, and she would just smell this horrible odor. And then it escalated further. Taylor had stuffed animals, and a lot of them. A bunch of them, gifts from family and friends for the new baby. Deborah kept them in a specific arrangement on the shelf in what was supposed to be the nursery that was never used now. And every morning they would be moved. Not fallen, moved, rearranged, sometimes stacked in a pyramid, sometimes lined up in a row, sometimes facing the wall. And Deborah asked Tony one morning, she said, "Are you moving Taylor's toys?" "What? Are you moving Taylor's toys?" "I went in there and moved all his toys facing the window. And then this morning when I went up there to get him a diaper, they were all turned facing the wall." "Are you doing that?" "No, Deborah, I wouldn't do that." She knew that he wasn't doing it, but inside she was hoping that it was him because, well, she knew baby Taylor was too young, and he certainly wasn't climbing the wall and rearranging his toys. And then it escalated further. Tony was a skeptic. Tony didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in anything supernatural. There had to be logical explanations for everything that Deborah was worried about. The keys. She was tired and forgetful. The pictures. Bad hooks and uneven walls. The smell was something from outside. The toys. Maybe Taylor was more mobile than they realized. And Deborah just looked at Tony and was like, "Are you an idiot? A 4-month-old cannot crawl up and change their toys, Tony. Taylor's smart, but he's not that smart." He had an explanation for everything. Until the night he saw it. The shadow. Tony was downstairs watching TV. It was late night, maybe 11 p.m. Deborah and Taylor were already asleep upstairs in the master bedroom. The house was quiet. And out of the corner of his eye, Taylor saw something move. A shadow, human-shaped, walking past the doorway to the living room. Tony jumped up. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. He walked to the doorway, looked into the long hall, and it was empty and dark. But he'd seen it, clear as day, A shadow shaped like a person walking past the door. Tony checked all the doors and windows. Everything locked. No one could have gotten in on the first floor. He told himself that it was just his eyes playing tricks. Don't we all? Reflection from the TV or something. But he knew what he'd seen. And deep down, he was starting to wonder if Deborah was right to be worried about this house. Three more weeks passed, and things were escalating at this point. Deborah would hear footsteps upstairs when no one was up there. Would hear what sounded like a child laughing, high-pitched, playful, coming from the nursery, and she would feel cold spots in that room that had no reason to be cold. And Tony started waking up with scratches on his body. Just small ones at first. On his arm, on his shoulder. He assumed he was scratching himself in sleep. Allergies maybe, dry skin. But then one morning he woke up with 3 long scratches down his back, deep and bleeding slightly. There was no way he could have reached his own back to do that. Deborah woke up as Tony was in the bathroom and he was checking, trying to see what his back looked like. He said it was stinging. And then he looked at Deborah and he asked her, "Did you scratch me in your sleep?" She hadn't, and she'd been on the other side of the bed all night, facing away from him. Deborah walked over and looked at his scratches. They were long, they were pretty deep, and they were bleeding. And she said that they were about that long, each one of them. And there were 3. Deborah said that it creeped her out so bad because something in the house was touching them while they slept. Something was in their bedroom and something was getting more and more aggressive. And it was just getting started. Question. Tony and Deborah had found their house at a suspiciously low price. Cheap. The landlord said that it had just been empty for a while. Do you believe him? Would you have questioned why that a beautiful historic home was renting for below market value? I would have. Or would you have jumped on the deal like they would have? Drop a red flag if you would have been suspicious, or a money bag if you would have taken that deal. Question 2. Baby Taylor screamed every time that he was put in the nursery. Wouldn't play in there even as he got older. Refused to be alone in that room. Babies and small children are supposed to be more susceptible to paranormal activity. Do you believe that? Let me know in the comments. If you think kids can see things we can't, drop a baby emoji. If you think they can't, then put a big red X. Question 3. Deborah experienced things first before Tony ever did. The moved objects, the smells, the sounds. Tony was skeptical and explained everything away. Why do you think that women are more likely to believe in paranormal activity versus men? Drop a ghost if you think it's real sensitivity that we experience. Or a man emoji if you think it's just coincidence. Final question. Tony woke up with scratches he couldn't have given himself. 3 deep scratches down his back that he couldn't even reach. If you woke up with the unexplained injuries, what would you do? Drop a running emoji if you're the hell out of there. Or just say, I'm curious, if you want to stay and investigate. Y'all can discuss it while I'm reading chapter 2. I'm just trying to take some of the pressure off my back a little bit. All right. Chapter 2. By the end of the first month, Tony and Deborah were arguing about whether to stay in this house. Deborah wanted to leave. Wanted to break the lease, lose the deposit. She didn't care. Whatever it took. She didn't care. Something was wrong with the house and she wanted out. Obviously. Tony wanted to stay. He said, Debbie, we signed a lease. We can't afford to break it. We don't even know what the landlord will do if we do try to break it. And to be honest with you, Tony still wasn't 100% convinced that it wasn't all explainable. We can't just run away every time that something happens, Debbie. We just can't. Tony said. And Debbie questioned him. She said, weird. Tony, you're waking up with scratches. Taylor won't even go to his own nursery. Things are moving around on their own. That's not weird. That's wrong. But they stayed. And they stayed because Tony said that they had signed a lease. Because they couldn't afford to move again so soon. And because Tony was trying to still rationalize everything. That was a mistake. The scratches get worse. The scratches on Tony's body became a nightly occurrence. He'd go to bed fine. He would wake up with new marks on his body. Scratches down his arms, across his chest, on his legs, always 3 scratches at a time. And you know, what's funny about that is I've read other ghost stories, and it's the same thing. 3 scratches. It's like a common thing. 3 parallel lines, like claw marks. And they're just getting deeper. And Deborah would help him clean and bandage them in the morning. And she would watch her husband, this big, strong man who'd never been afraid of anything, flinch as she put antiseptic on his wounds. She told him one morning, "They're getting infected, Tony. We need to go see a doctor." And Tony looked at her and tell him what? That a ghost is scratching me? Tony shook his head. "They'll think I'm freaking crazy, Debbie." But the wounds were getting badly infected, and some of them weren't healing right. And Tony was starting to look haunted, gaunt. He wouldn't eat. He was exhausted, like he wasn't sleeping enough, even though he was in bed for 8 hours. I'm sure he was laying there in complete terror, wondering if it was going to happen to him again. The night that everything changed. It was about 6 weeks later. The scratches, I guess, were not enough anymore. And so it escalated. It was a Tuesday night in late November. It was cold outside, but Deborah said that the house was warm, too warm actually, and the heat seemed to be turned up high, even though Tony kept adjusting the thermostat. So Tony and Deborah went to bed around 10 p.m. And Taylor was asleep in the crib in their room, and they'd given up at this point of ever using the nursery. Around 2 a.m., Tony woke up screaming to searing pain. Not scratching, burning. His chest felt like it was on fire, like someone had pressed a hot iron against his skin, is the way that he described it. He screamed, he jerked awake, he was tearing at his shirt, and Deborah turned on the light, and what she saw made him scream too. Tony's chest, his entire chest, was covered in what looked like burn marks. Red, blistering, in the shape of a handprint. Small fingers like a child's hand had been pressed against his skin while burning hot. And he went so far as to say that when he felt the hand removed from his skin, it was as if he felt it pull his skin as the hand pulled away. Oh. "Oh my God," Deborah whispered. "Oh my God, Tony." Tony looked down at himself, at the burns, at the clear outline of the small fingers on his chest, 5 of them. And for the first time since moving in the house, Tony Pickett was truly terrified. So they go to the hospital. They went to the ER immediately, left Taylor with Deborah's mother, and drove to the hospital at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. The ER doctor examined Tony's chest, looked at the burns, looked at the healing scratches on his arms and back, and looked at Tony's face. And then the doctor asked him, "How did this happen, sir?" Tony and Deborah exchanged glances. "How do you explain this? How do you tell a doctor that something invisible burned you in your sleep?" "I don't know," Tony said. "I woke up and it was like this." The doctor's expression changed and became more concerned. "Mr. Pickett, can I speak to you for a minute?" So Tony and the doctor walked over to another small room. Deborah was left inside the examining room. Um, Mr. Pickett, I have to ask you, these injuries that I'm seeing here, is someone hurting you at home? So Tony realized what the doctor was implying. It was implying that he was being abused. Um, that Deborah was doing this, that this was a case of domestic violence. No, no, Tony said firmly. No, sir, it is nothing like that. It is not my wife, okay? I don't know how it happened. I just woke up and I was burning. So the doctor didn't look convinced, but he treated the burns. And get this, the burns were second-degree burns. Second-degree burns on Tony's chest. He told them that the burns would scar him and gave Tony instructions for care and suggested strongly that Tony might want to talk to someone. He still believed that he was being abused by Deborah, that he needed to talk to a counselor, a therapist, because people don't just wake up with scratches and burns all over their bodies. That just doesn't happen. Except it was happening, and it was getting worse. The investigation begins. After the hospital visit, Tony started documenting everything. He set up a video camera in their bedroom, pointed it at the bed, and turned it on before they went to sleep. The first few nights, nothing really. The tape would show them going to sleep, and then 8 hours later waking up, no movement during the night. But Tony would still wake up with new scratches and new burns. This was becoming a nightly thing for him. So it was hard for him to recover from the burns because he would just be burned again. Ouch. Can you imagine that? So Deborah asked him, she said, is the camera picking up anything? And he said, no, the camera's not picking anything up, but clearly I'm still being attacked. He was frustrated. And he said, but look at this. And so he showed Deborah his arm. Fresh scratches, 3 of them, 3 parallel lines, bleeding. And he said, these were not here when I went to bed. So whatever they were battling was invisible. Things get violent. Things escalated. Objects started being thrown, not falling, thrown with force. Deborah would be in the kitchen and a cup would just fly off the counter and shatter against the wall. She'd be in the living room and a picture frame would launch itself against the room. Tony installed cameras throughout the whole house, and he actually caught it, the footage of this happening. On video, clear as day, a toy in Taylor's room lifted off the shelf, lifted straight up in the air, and hurled across the room, hitting the opposite wall with enough force to leave a dent. No strings, no tricks, the toy just flew. So Tony watched the footage over and over, and he was trying to find an explanation, a rational reason for what he was seeing and what they were experiencing. There wasn't one. Footsteps. And then every night around 11 p.m., they started to hear footsteps upstairs in the nursery. Small footprints sounded like a child running back and forth for about 10 minutes, and then there was complete silence. So Tony would go upstairs to check, and of course, he would find nothing, just an empty room. But the footsteps had been crystal clear, and he and Deborah both had heard them. So one night, Tony had an idea. He sprinkled baby powder on the floor of the nursery before bed. If something was walking up there, he figured it would leave footprints. The next morning, he went upstairs. There were footprints in the powder. Small, child-sized, bare feet. They went from the doorway to the window, back to the closet, to the center of the room in random patterns, like a child had been running and playing. But no one had been in that room. The door had been closed all night. And the footprints were too small to be Tony's, Deborah's, or even Taylor's. These feet were smaller, like a 5 or 6 year old child's feet. Tony took pictures, he measured them, he documented everything. And he realized that they were not alone in this house. Now you say that? Someone was living there with them. The attacks against Tony continue to escalate, but the question is, why only Tony? Deborah was not attacked. Taylor was not attacked. It was only Tony. But why? Here's what was strange. The attacks were almost exclusively targeting Tony. Yes, Deborah experienced things, heard things, she saw things move, but she was never scratched, never burned, never physically attacked or the baby. It was always Tony. And the scratches appeared on his body. The burns marked his skin and scarred it. Objects would fly near him. They were always directed toward him, but never at Deborah. So Deborah was crying one night. He was trying to apply salve to his chest that was burned again. And she said, "Why is it only hurting you?" She was crying as she bandaged yet another set of scratches on Tony's back, and Tony didn't know. But he was starting to notice a pattern, and the attacks were worse, it seemed, when he was angry, when he was stressed, when he raised his voice or got frustrated. It was like whatever was in the house was feeding off of his negative energy or pushing him for it or something like that. They decided that it was time to seek help. So where do you go when you are experiencing this kind of activity? Their church. So desperate, they reached out to their church and they told their pastor what was happening, asked if he could come bless the house, pray, do something, anything to make it stop. So the pastor came, he walked through the house, said prayers in every room, blessed the doorways, and he left them with holy water and religious medals to hang on the walls. That night, the attacks were the worst that they had ever been. Tony woke up with scratches covering his entire back. It wasn't just a set of one, it was many. Burns on both arms and something new. Bite marks on his shoulder, small teeth marks, like a child's bite, but it was deep enough to break the skin and make it bleed. The blessings hadn't helped. If anything, it had made whatever was in the house extremely angry. By December, Tony looked like he had been through a war. His body was covered in scratches, burns, bite marks. He'd lost weight. He wasn't sleeping well. He was jumpy. He was on edge. He was constantly looking over his shoulder. And Deborah was terrified. She was terrified not just of the house, but of what this was doing to her husband. She screamed one night and she said, "We have to leave! Tony, please! This thing is killing you! It's trying to kill you!" And Tony finally agreed. They'd break the lease. They would lose the deposit, whatever it cost. They had to get out of this house. And they had to get out of it now. But before they left, Tony wanted answers. He'd been documenting everything for months, had videos, photos, written logs of every incident, and he wanted to know what in the hell was in that house. Why was it attacking him? What did it want? So Tony made a phone call that would change everything. He called a paranormal investigating team. And when they arrived and started investigating, they found something that made Tony's blood run cold. Evidence that they weren't dealing with a friendly ghost. Not a little girl playing pranks. They were dealing with something much, much darker. Something that had been in that house for over 100 years. Something that hated men. So, question 1. Tony was being scratched, burned, and bitten. But only when he was asleep or when he was not looking. The entity never attacked him face to face. Why do you think that is? Do you think that it was toying with him on purpose? Question number 2. The ER doctor thought that Deborah was abusing Tony. That's how bad that the injuries looked. If you were the doctor, would you have believed a ghost story? Or would you have assumed domestic violence? Question 3. The attacks just continued to get worse, even after the pastor blessed the house. So religious blessing made it angrier. Does that tell you something about what was in the house? If you think evil hates blessings, or if you think it was just coincidence. Question number 4. Only Tony was being attacked. Deborah and baby Taylor never experienced that. They did experience weird things, but were never hurt. The entity especially targeted the adult man in the house. Why? Why do you think that was? If you think it was threatened by men, say threatened. If you think Tony did something to provoke it, say Tony did it. I'll let y'all discuss while I continue with chapter 3. December 1993. The call. Tony contacted a paranormal investigating team based out of Kansas City. They specialized in documenting hauntings, collecting evidence, trying to understand what was happening in reportedly haunted locations. The team was led by a woman named Renee. She'd been investigating the paranormal for over a decade. She had seen a lot of hoaxes, a lot of explainable phenomena, and a handful of cases that genuinely did disturb her. When Tony called and described what was happening, the physical attacks, the scratches, the burns, the bite marks, Renee was skeptical at first. People claim to be attacked by ghosts all the time, she said. Usually there was a logical explanation for it. But Tony sent her photos, medical records from the ER, and videos of objects moving on their own. And when Renee saw that, she agreed to come and investigate. First night of investigation. So the team arrived with their equipment, EMF detectors to measure electromagnetic fields, digital recorders for EVP, electronic voice phenomena, infrared cameras, motion sensors, everything they need to document paranormal activity if it existed. Tony and Deborah took them through the house, explaining what happened in each room, the bedroom where Tony was attacked nightly, the living room where they'd seen shadows. Renee walked through slowly, and she was taking readings with the EMF detector, and this is what she had to say. Mr. and Mrs. Pickett, the readings in this house are off the charts, she said, frowning. I'm especially feeling the strongest vibes upstairs. The nursery has extremely high electromagnetic fields, and there's no electrical explanation for it. No wiring running through these walls that would cause this. And then they went to the basement. The Picketts rarely went down there. It was always chilly, it was unfinished, it was dark, it was creepy, it had a dirt floor, it was just old stone walls, the dirt floor, storage for things that they just, didn't need, they would just put down there. The moment that the team descended the stairs, every piece of equipment went haywire. The EMF detector spiked so high that it maxed out. The temperature dropped, and one of the investigators had a thermometer that showed a 20-degree temperature drop in just seconds. And everyone felt it. This overwhelming sense of dread of being watched, of something down there with them that did not want them there. And one of the investigators said, "We need to leave." His voice was shaking. "Right now, we need to get out of this basement. This basement is not good." Communicating with the dead, the first EVP session. So that night, the team set up digital recorders throughout the house, and these would record constantly, picking up sounds that the human ear might miss. And later they would review the recordings and listen for EVPs, voices, sounds, communication from the other side. So Renee sat in the nursery with a recorder, and she asked questions out loud. Is there someone here with us? Nothing. What is your name? Nothing. Why are you hurting, Tony? Nothing. At the time, they heard nothing. Just silence after each question. But when they reviewed the recordings later, they heard responses. Is there someone here with us? Yes. What is your name? Sally. Why are you hurting, Tony? There was no response. So, after Renee asked, is there someone here with us, there was a clear response. A child's voice, young and female, that said yes. After what is your name, another response. Sally. And that's when they heard her name. That's when they learned her name. Sally. A little girl living in that house. Or what they thought was a little girl. Provoking the entity. On the second night, the team wanted to try something different. They'd been told that the entity was specifically targeting Tony, especially when he was angry or stressed. So they decided to provoke it deliberately. Tony stood in the nursery. The cameras were rolling, EMF detectors positioned around the room. The entire team was watching, recording, and documenting. And they told Tony to start yelling. He shouted out, "I'm not afraid of you." He shouted at the empty room, "This is my house." He shouted out, "You need to leave." He shouted out, "Get out!" He was angry, he was aggressive, he was confrontational, exactly the energy that seemed to trigger the attacks. The response was immediate. Every EMF detector in the room spiked simultaneously. The temperature plummeted so cold that the whole investigating team could see their breath, and Tony felt it. How? A push. Hard. Against his chest, like invisible hands shoveling him backward. He stumbled, but he caught himself, and then scratches appeared on his arm, right there, in front of everyone. And 3 red lines dragging down his forearm, breaking the skin and drawing blood. Live, on camera, with witnesses watching. This entity attacked Tony Pickett. Tony was attacked by something invisible, something strong enough to push him and claw him while multiple people watched. The investigators captured it all. The moment the scratches appeared, Tony's reaction, the spike in EMF readings, the temperature drop, they captured every bit of it. It was the most documented paranormal attack any of them had ever witnessed. What they discovered: over 3 nights of investigation, the team documented over 40 EVP recordings, what sounded like a young girl's voice. Multiple instances of objects moving on their own, captured on video. Extreme EMF fluctuations with no natural source. Temperature anomalies, rooms dropping 20 plus degrees in seconds. The live attack on Tony in the nursery. Footsteps recorded on audio when no one was upstairs. A full apparition caught on infrared camera. A small figure, child-sized, standing in the hallway. The evidence was overwhelming. Undeniable. This house was genuinely haunted. But by what? The story of Sally. The legend emerges. So, a couple of the investigators did research into the house's history, and they found a story, a local legend that had been passed down for generations. So, in the late 1800s, the house had been a doctor's office. The doctor lived upstairs and saw patients on the first floor. One day, a mother brought in her sick daughter, a little girl about 6 years old. She was complaining of severe stomach pain, and the mother begged the doctor to help her. She didn't have a lot of money, and she didn't know what to do. So the doctor examined the girl and realized immediately what was wrong. Appendicitis. Advanced. And her appendix was about to rupture. So he needed to operate immediately, or this little girl was going to die. But this was the 1800s. And unfortunately, there was no anesthesia. No sterile surgical environments. Just a doctor with a weapon trying to save a child's life. So the doctor laid the girl on his examination table, told her to be brave, and began cutting into her abdomen while she was fully conscious. The girl screamed, she fought, she begged him to stop. She didn't understand that he was trying to save her life. She just knew that a man was hurting her, was cutting her, and was causing her unbearable pain. And she passed on that table, died in agony, died believing that the doctor had murdered her. Her name was Sally. Now, according to the legend, Sally's spirit never left that house. She stayed in the house where she died forever, a 6-year-old girl, forever traumatized by what had happened to her. And because of what happened to her, she hated men. Because a man hurt her. A man cut her open, and a man caused her death. That's why she was attacking Tony, a couple of the investigators thought. That's why the entity targeted the adult male in the house, but left Deborah and baby Taylor alone. She was afraid of men. She was angry at men, punishing men for what was done to her. But there's a problem with this story. The legend was compelling. It fit perfectly with what was happening and explained everything. But Renee, the lead investigator, wasn't completely convinced. She said this: Here's the thing, Tony and Deborah. We've researched this house extensively. We can't find any records of it being a doctor's office. No death certificates for a child named Sally at this address. No documentation that this surgery ever happened. So Deborah asked Renee, so the story isn't true then? I'm not saying that, Renee said. Urban legends often do have kernels of truth. But, Renee paused, the entity that we're communicating with, it says its name is Sally and it presents itself as a young girl, but some of the activity here, it doesn't match up. The violence, the strength, the anger, it just doesn't feel like a 6-year-old child to me. So Tony asked Renee, what are you saying then? I'm saying that what's in this house might not be what it claims to be. It might be presenting as a little girl, but underneath that, it could be something else, something darker, something a lot darker. So Renee looked at both of them seriously. You need to leave this house tonight. Don't stay here another night. If you do, Tony, I'm scared for you. So Tony told her, we're already planning to break the lease. Good. Because whatever this entity is, Sally or something pretending to be Sally, it's getting more violent, and I'm afraid of what will happen to you if you stay. But they couldn't leave that night. Couldn't find a place that fast. They needed a few more days to arrange moving. They were going to move back in with one of their parents. So they stayed one more night. And that night, Tony experienced the worst attack yet. He woke up at 3 a.m. Always 3 a.m. He noticed every attack happened at 3 a.m. The scratches were immediate. They were down his back, his arms, his legs, deeper than they had ever been. He had never been attacked on his legs before. And it was drawing blood. Blood streams were flowing down his legs, his arms, his back. And then the burns on his chest, on his stomach, they were worse than they had ever been and burned worse than they had ever had. Like invisible hot hands pressing against his skin. Both hands this time. And then something new. Tony couldn't move. He was awake. He was conscious. His eyes were open, but his body wouldn't respond. He couldn't move his arms, his legs, couldn't even turn his head. He was completely paralyzed. And he felt weight on his chest, like something sitting on him, pressing down, making it hard for him to breathe. He tried to call out to Deborah that was sleeping right next to him. Couldn't make a sound. His voice wouldn't work. And then he saw it. Standing at the foot of the bed. Not a little 6-year-old girl. Something else. A figure. Tall. Dark. Shaped like a person, but wrong. Too thin. Too tall. Standing completely still. Just watching them. Tony stared at it. He said that he was unable to move, unable to scream, unable to do anything but watch as this thing watched him back. And then it spoke. Not out loud, in his head, a voice that wasn't a voice, cold, angry, and hateful. It said one word, mine. The paralysis broke. Tony lurched upright, gasping. The figure was gone, but his body was covered in raw injuries. Scratches, burns, bruises around his throat, like something had been trying to choke the life out of him. Deborah woke him up sobbing. This big, strong man who'd never been afraid of anything was crying like a baby because something had just held him down and hurt him while he was helpless to stop it. We're leaving, Tony said. They got up, grabbed Taylor, got in the car, and stayed at a motel that night. And they did. The next day, they came back. They packed what they could. They left the rest, broke the lease, lost their deposit, and they did not care. They got out of 508 North 2nd Street. But the story of the Sallie house, night dwellers, that was just the beginning. Question 1. The investigators caught Tony being scratched live on camera. Scratches appeared on his arm with multiple witnesses watching. That's documented, undeniable evidence. How do you explain that? Do you believe it's paranormal? Or do you still think that there's another explanation for this? The entity called itself Sallie and sounded like a little girl on EVP recordings, but the investigators said that the violence didn't match a child's spirit, and she was right. So, do you think that entities can lie? Can something evil pretend to be something innocent? Do you think it's really a little girl with extreme power? Or do you think it's just something darker pretending to be little by the name of Sallie? Question 3. Tony was held down, couldn't move, couldn't scream, saw a tall, dark figure at the end of his bed. That's classic sleep paralysis symptoms. But he also had fresh physical injuries when he could move again. Sleep paralysis doesn't leave scratches and burns, does it? So what was it? If you think it was sleep paralysis, okay. Or do you think it was an actual entity attack? Question 4. The legend says Sallie died during surgery and hates men because a male doctor hurt her. But there are no records of this ever happening. Does that make the haunting less real? Or can spirits lie about their origins? If you need historical proof, say, I need more. If you think the entity is just using a fake backstory, say that ghost is fake. I'll let you discuss. Let's take a 10-minute intermission. And when I come back, we'll finish the story. I hope you're enjoying the Sallie House haunting. For those of you who did not see the dress, I will go ahead and show you now. So it is purple velvet. Purple velvet. And it has a long train that goes behind it. Like that. And it's just like a very deep, like a, I don't know what you would call this color. It's purple, but it's not purple. And so that is the gown tonight. See the train? Isn't that pretty? Love it, love it, love it, love it. Let's go. My back doesn't seem to twinge so much when I sit like that. So let me go in and talk to everyone for a minute. Uh-oh. I just closed out of everyone for a minute. There we go. Oh, I'm so glad you like it. It is a super comfy dress. It has amazing stretch on it. So I love that. Sometimes I think it's the cat hair that gets in my eyes. Hello, Alicia. Hello, Ray Ray. Hey, Ray Bab. Let me see. Not achieved. What does that mean? Set up a new goal. I put a spell on you because you're mine. What does it show now? Oh, thank you, Raybad. Hello, Theodosia. Hello, Kelly. Hey, X. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not seeing all the chat messages. Hello, Lucid Dream. How are you? It's good? Okay. All right, great. It is. It's like a plum. Yeah, definitely. Okay, Jennifer. Scare Hunter. Hello. How are you? Hey, Hopi Love, Little Butterfly. Thank you, Lulu. Yeah, like a plum wine. Hello, Moon Monster. Isn't it? Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, everyone. My name is Bryn Morgan. I am a horror author and I am also a lover of scary stories, as you can see tonight. Um, Thank you so much and welcome. If you like scary stories and you want to hear them 6 days a week, consider hitting that follow button and the notification bell and never missing another Twisted Tales Live. And welcome. Your family is real pirates? Oh, wow. I love pirates. I have too, and I had never heard the angle of, I had never heard the angle of, I knew about the little girl Sally, but I never heard anything about a doctor doing surgery on her, um, or anything like that. Had anyone ever heard that story before? Hey, Susie Q. Tigger, thank you. Thank you, thank you. You had? I never heard that. When I was doing the research and I came across that, I'm like, now that is an angle that I never heard before. I figured the Ghost Adventures was there. I had a feeling. Oh, you haven't heard of this one, Turtle Woman? Oh, this one's good. This is supposed to be the most violent haunted house in America. Right. Um, I don't know if I'm getting two stories mixed up, but there was another one where the woman started talking to Sally and would buy it toys when she would buy her child a toy or something like that. Isn't this the same one? It is located in Atchison, Kansas. Okay, I thought so. And something about it would start fires if she didn't speak to it. She would talk to it just like it was a normal child. Okay, I was like, am I getting two stories mixed up? I don't think I am. Zach was scratched on his back. I might have seen that one. Lucid Dream, I am telling the Sally House haunting. I believe the Winchester House is down on my list. I believe it's in there. Wow. So tell me, night dwellers, would you go stay there for a night? Okay, I thought so, Palm. Awesome. Has it been 10 minutes? I don't know. Can someone let me know when it is? Hello, Amber. You're two chicken eggs? Oh, come on. I'm pushing through it tonight. I'm feeling that twinge in my back again, but I'm trying to deal with it. I've got a leg propped up. I know I don't look very ladylike right now, but whatever. I don't feel very ladylike right now. You would, just not alone? We could probably get a group together, Pariah, that would go in there. Lulu, I guess it's because it's something that I really enjoy. I enjoy bringing good, solid entertainment to my viewers. Um, and it's relaxing, it's calming. Believe it or not, after a long day of doing Night Queen things, sitting down with y'all and just telling a story is very relaxing and calming for me, mentally, emotionally, physically, minus the back pain. But you know, it's calming for me. Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you, Pastelina Pink. I will take that. Yeah, so we need to have a big van, like a big bus, and put night dwellers on it, on the sides, and then a black bus with purple and probably green, and then just go to different haunted sites that you can visit and stay overnight. What do you think about that? Who are my brave ones? Who are my chickens? Wouldn't that be amazing? You're in? Oh, nice. Wonderful. I've got some brave night dwellers. Oh, Spicy Joe says, I'm a brave chicken. And Pamela says, cluck cluck. Oh, hold up. Who's bringing the food? Yes. Oh, I know we could. We could do it like, with no problem whatsoever. We need a guy for sacrifice. Exactly. Tracy, you're going to cater? Okay, make sure you got some good food on there. All right. Let's, I'm going to try to switch it up a little bit for the second part. You know me, Miss Switcheroo. And don't forget, tomorrow night is Thursday night, and what does that mean? You're volunteering your son-in-law? I got you, Kelly. That is too funny. You all for your brother? Well, I think we've got a plan then. Definitely. Aw. Y'all are funny. Y'all make the queen laugh. You know that, right? Chapter 4. After the escape. January 1944. 94, sorry. Tony, Deborah, and baby Taylor moved in with Deborah's parents temporarily, just until they could find another place and get back on their feet. They'd lost their deposit, broken their lease, had to leave most of their furniture behind because they fled so quickly. They were essentially having to start over. But they were safe, and that's what mattered. 2 nights after leaving the house, Tony woke up with fresh scratches. He was in Deborah's parents' house in a different city, miles from 508 North 2nd Street, in a room that he had never slept in before. He lay there, and he felt it burning. He had 3 new scratches down his back. Deborah couldn't believe it. He was sitting up in bed. She turned the lamp on. "No," Deborah whispered when she saw them. "No, no, 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 that's not possible. We left. We got out. Why is it still doing this to you?" But there they were, fresh, bleeding slightly, the same pattern as always. 3 parallel lines, like claw marks. Tony felt sick. They'd left the house, they'd escaped, but whatever was attacking him had followed. The entity attached. Over the next few weeks, Tony continued to experience phenomena. Scratches appearing on his body, seeing shadows in his peripheral vision, feeling like he was being watched constantly. Nightmares every time he slept. Always the same nightmare of being back in the house, unable to leave. It wasn't as intense as when they lived there. The attacks were less frequent, less violent, but they were still happening. Renee, the lead investigator, explained it to them. What you have to understand, Tony and Deborah, is sometimes entities attach themselves to people, not just locations, especially if there was a strong connection formed. And Tony, I hate to say this, but you provoked it. You challenged it. You gave it attention. It's formed an attachment to you. Tony looked at Renee. How do I make it stop? You need a cleansing, something to break the attachment. Some people use sage, some use religious rituals. Different things work for different situations. Trying everything. Tony and Deborah tried everything they could think of. They had a priest perform a blessing on Tony, sprinkled him with holy water, sent prayers for protection. The scratches continued. They bought sage and did a smudging ritual, walking through the room with burning sage, trying to cleanse the negative energy. The scratches continued. They went to a spiritual healer who claimed to be able to break attachments. She performed some kind of ritual, but told Tony that he was now free. The scratches continued. Nothing worked. Whatever had attached itself to Tony wasn't letting up. The toll on Tony, the breaking point. By February, about 2 months after leaving the house, Tony was falling apart. He'd lost more weight, he wasn't sleeping, he was jumpy, he was anxious, he was constantly on edge. The physical injuries were bad, but the psychological toll was so much worse. He was scared to sleep, scared to be alone, scared in his own skin. Deborah was watching her husband deteriorate, watching this strong man who'd never been afraid of anything, becoming a shell of himself. We need to go back, Tony said one night. Deborah raised up in the bed. What? No! Absolutely not! Why would we go back there? I need to confront it. I need to face it. Tell it to leave me alone. As long as I'm running, it has power over me. I need to go back to that house, and I need to end this. Deborah did not go back with him, but Tony did. Against Deborah's wishes, against all logic and reason, Tony went back to 508 North 2nd Street. He didn't tell the new tenants what he was doing. He had called the landlord and told them that he needed to move a few things out of the basement. The landlord said that the tenants would be gone so they could go in there and move their things. He just showed up at the house that day. The landlord had given him permission to retrieve the items, but Tony wasn't there for furniture. He stood in the living room, the same room where he'd seen shadows, where objects had been thrown, where his nightmare had begun. And he spoke out loud. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You need to leave me alone. Let me go. I don't live here anymore. This isn't my house. Find someone else to torment. I'm done. For a moment, nothing. The familiar cold, that sense of presence, that feeling of being watched. And he heard it. A voice. Not out loud, not in his head. That same cold, angry voice from the night he'd been paralyzed. Mine. Always mine. You invited me. You gave me permission. Tony realized with horror what it meant. By provoking the entity, by challenging it, by engaging with it, he had essentially invited it into his life, given it permission to attach to him. I take it back, Tony said. I revoke permission. You're not welcome. Leave me alone. Laughter. Cold, cruel laughter echoing in his mind. And then Tony felt the push hard against his chest, knocking him backward, making him stumble. He ran. He got out of that house as fast as he could and swore that he would never go back. The story goes public. In March 1994, a local newspaper ran a story about the Sallie House, about the Pickett family's experience, about the paranormal investigators' findings. The story went viral. Well, as viral as things could go in 1994, before the internet was mainstream. It was picked up by regional newspapers, then national papers, and then paranormal investigators caught on to it. Suddenly, the Sallie House was famous. People were fascinated by it. The documented evidence, the photographs of Tommy's injuries, the EVP recordings, the video footage. Paranormal investigating teams from across the country wanted to investigate it. The landlord started getting calls from researchers, ghost hunters, curiosity seekers. And Tony and Deborah just wanted it to all go away. During all this, Deborah had remained relatively untouched. She had witnessed things, yes, heard things, seen objects move, but she'd never been physically attacked until one night in April. Deborah was having a nightmare. She was dreaming about the Sallie House. In the dream, she was back in the nursery, and she said that something was wrong. The room was too cold, too dark, and there was a figure in the corner. Small, child-sized, but wrong. The proportions were off. The face was wrong. She said it was smiling at her, this terrible, wrong smile. I just scared myself. And then Deborah woke up screaming, and on her arm were scratches, just 3 small, like the entity was sending her a message. I can hurt you too, if I want, but I choose not to. Not for now. That was the moment that Deborah truly understood what they'd been dealing with. This wasn't a little girl. This wasn't Sallie, the tragic child who died during the surgery. It wasn't that. This was something else, something that could choose its victims, something intelligent, something malicious. By summer 1994, about 6 months after leaving the house, the attacks on Tony finally began to fade. The scratches became less frequent, then stopped altogether. The nightmares became less intense. The feeling of being watched started to dissipate. Tony started sleeping through the night again, started gaining weight back, and started to feel like himself. He would always have those scars to remind him. Whatever had attached to him had finally let go. Maybe because he'd stopped giving it energy. Maybe because he stopped feeding it with fear. Maybe because time and distance had weakened the connection. Maybe because it found new victims in the house. Tony didn't know, and he didn't care. He was just grateful that it was over. But the experience left marks that went deeper than the scratches and burns. The aftermath. Tony had PTSD, would wake up in a panic at 3 a.m. in the morning, the time when he'd always been attacked, would get anxious in old houses and would refuse to be alone in the dark. Deborah had trust issues with paranormal claims. She believed in ghosts as abstract concepts before. Now she knew that they were real, and that knowledge changed everything. Taylor, even as a baby, seemed to remember as he got older he'd have nightmares about the bad house, would refuse to go near Victorian homes, and would cry if they drove down streets that looked like the neighborhood in Atchison. The Sally house had taken its toll on all of the Pickett family, changed them, traumatized them. Everyone has heard the story of the paranormal teams that went there, how the house became a paranormal hotspot. I really wanted to focus on the people that were haunted there, and that was the Pickett family. I am glad that they finally found peace. I'm glad that the attacks stopped. It's chilling. Absolutely chilling. The house on 2nd Street still stands, with secrets buried in its walls. A century of trembling hands and echoes in its haunted halls. They came for dreams. They came for home, for shelter, safety, something pure. But found instead they weren't alone, that some old wounds refused to cure. Tony bears his scars today. both seen and hidden from the light. Some marks will never fade away. Some fears will waken in the night. We ask if ghosts are truly real, if evil walks on mortal ground. But does it matter what you feel when blood is shed without a sound? The legend speaks of Sally's pain, a child who died and couldn't rest. But truth and fiction blur again. The lie may serve the story best. So here's your choice. Make it well. Believe in spirits, science none, but know that heaven coexists with hell. And some doors once opened can't be undone. The Sally house remembers every name, every footstep, every scream. And now you know it just the same. This nightmare's more than just a dream. My stories burrow deep where they cannot flee. And in the darkest corridors of your nightmares, you belong to me. You do. Pleasant dreams. darn it.